here. I'm here to present a bit of my PhD work in that young researcher session, and it is about the nesting brick with the subtitle Functionalizing Ceramic Building Components through AM. I'm quite lucky in my research that I was approached at an early stage by somebody who's already producing ceramics. Oh, there we are, which was the Hagemeister GmbH from near Münster in Germany. And they have a special brick called the nesting brick, Nistklinker in German, which can be flushly included into facade systems and then host some endangered species. So imagine you want to build a house and you don't get permission because there's an endangered bird or bat or whatever living on that plot of land. And you come up with this product and say, hey, I can include this species into my facade, into my building, and keep this habitat. And therefore, there is quite a high demand for these pieces. And unfortunately, this is the way they are produced. There's literally someone standing in a workshop and carving these hollow bricks out of blocks of clay. And he has quite a low output. Let's say he produces 3 pieces a day, which is 15 a week, of which 2, 3, 4 break during firing. So the output is low, the demand is high, which results in good pricing, at least for the company. But sooner or later, this man will retire, and all the knowledge he has will be lost because this profession can't be, or is not taught anymore to be a Formsteinmechaniker. And they approached me and told me, hey, can we somehow solve that through digitalization, through additive manufacturing? And I said, well, I'll try. And we had to identify the biggest problems in that. So all this is about ceramic 3D printing, and this is a paste process. And you must imagine I'm stacking pudding. This is a very soft material. We have seen that in the videos of Benjamin Düllenberger, all that collapsing concrete paste. Same happens with clay because it's quite a moist material that doesn't hold too much. So we had a problem in the stability when it comes to any overhangs or bridged areas, which of course is very important for a hollow brick to have an overhang or a bridged area to create even these cavities. So we did some studies. This is something I actually did with Bruno in GmbH 2 years ago, I think, it was 2 years ago, as a guest researcher, and we looked quite deep into all the strategies to overcome that limitations on overhang and on bridging. You can see there were interface layers from foil, from foam. There is some cardboard blocks that were pre-installed to just make it possible to have these bridged and overhanging areas. And the short answer for all that is there is no perfect way. But you can even combine these methods, which in the end resulted in us having some blocks to speed up the process. We had an area with the overhang you can see on the side. We printed material to really support it, to have a good surface quality, and for good removal we put some foil underneath that bridged area. And by that, we made it to double the size or the achievable size of overhangs and bridgings, as you can see it here. So this is a parametric geometry. You can see it's a bit pale on the top, but you can see there's a parameter for overhang and a parameter for bridging. And the top piece, so the top physical piece, has only the parameters that we evaluated were possible with clay without any supports. So that means we have like 15-degree overhang and basically 0 bridging. And with all these strategies I just showed you in the previous slide, we managed to get an overhang of about 60-ish degrees and quite a wide bridging. The only thing that limited bridges in this case here was the size of the printer. So if we had a bigger printer, that could even be 4 times that size. So there is still a limit. We can do, 80 degrees overhang. That's not possible, but at least we can do 60 now, and we can do bridged areas. Another topic for us was the flush inclusion of the pieces. into masonry. You can imagine if you have a facing brick wall, you want to have the components to look just like your pieces, which was easy as long as they were carved out. But in 3D printing, we all know we have these characteristic layered appearance. So we took a look into surface finishing by wiping down, grinding, even milling. You can see that Athena hat, which is the TU Darmstadt logo, we carved into the dried surfaces, and just tried for some strategies to approximate the appearance of a commercial brick. Commercial brick is top left. And we came quite close. Another topic, if you investigate such surfaces, is of course also the quality or the properties of these surfaces. So clinker bricks, facing wall bricks, in Germany, according to the standards, are not allowed to consume or to absorb more than 6% moisture. So we had to just test if the strategies we perform on that surfaces somehow influence that absorption. And the answer is luckily no. It doesn't get more porous or more brittle or whatever from this. And also the surface hardness was tested. You can see that on the bottom with that scratch test. It's according to Mohs. So there's a Mohs hardness factor of 6 to be achieved. But we only were able to indirectly prove this by seeing that the chisel we used to scratch number 4 and 5, you can see some wear on the tip, while number 6 was the intact tip. So it was a bit through the back door, but we proved that the surface the surface properties were not negatively affected by the treatment. In the end, we came up with this little column. You may have noticed this last year at the exhibition, which just shows 8 different strategies to surface finish your 3D printed ceramics. You can see on the screen it's an undulating surface, but on the right side is a tessellated surface, and on the back side it's flat. So it's just been tested on the normal, or let's say contemporary architectural surfaces. And at some point I was quite confident, knowing, okay, the geometric topic is kind of solved, and also that topic of appearance is solved. So I asked the company to provide me with drawings of their nesting bricks. This, for example, is the nesting brick made for bats. You can see there's a small opening where the bat can crawl in and then sleep during the day and come back at night from the facade. And we just started by taking these geometries, put them in the slicer, hit print, and it didn't work, as you see on the left side. We had massive breakage that was partially due to drying. We had that spalling you can see on the bottom left, that was trapped air and trapped moisture that exploded when it got at, I think it was 1150 degrees. So that didn't work too well. So we had to do some design for additive manufacturing, optimize a bit, and you can see on the right side that's the optimized piece with which even received some surface treatment. And this worked way better. And this is also the piece that's displayed at the booth at 11.0 F47. So if you want to go there and touch it, yes, it's quite stable. This is one of the exhibits you may touch. Some others, please don't. We compared these objects we printed. We directly printed with the optimized versions, and even saw that we had time savings of around 15%, which is good because we all know this is a very slow process we have here. On the other hand, we consumed a bit more material, but this was, so the pieces in average were 3% heavier than the non-optimized ones. But as we know, material is cheap, labor is costly. I think we can work with these 3% more material and 15% less time for production. Yeah, in the end, I assembled this all into a demonstrator containing multiple nesting bricks, one for the bats, the one on top for the swallows, and the one on the bottom is for tits. Sorry, I'm not making up these names, this is proper English. And when looking at other ways to functionalize ceramics, you can also refer to this project we showed last year. This is about facade greening, where we tried to include undemanding species, undemanding plants into facades, as you know them from roof greening, which went quite well. And lastly, as a little outlook on what's maybe next year on BAM, right now we are working on heritage protection. So we have some broken out fragments from ceramic building components and we reprint them. So we go and we scan them and we try to reprint them. We also evaluate how well the scanning and reprinting worked out. And yeah, this is basically what's about to come soon. So this was a quick run through functionalizing AM ceramics. I think now it's time for somebody to ask the audience the questions. Ollie, do you do that or do I do that myself? Oh, okay. For me, for the answers, okay.
Thank you very much. I was about to ask somebody questions, but we have two already, so I'll hand over the microphone.
Hello, thanks for your presentation. I'm just a little bit curious about the design for additive manufacturing process you follow to design and manufacture your bricks.
You're referring to this picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, we mostly optimized a bit. You can see that standard configuration brick has these vertical holes, which we know from Hochlochziegel. Sorry, I'm missing the English word. But you know, these vertical holes were just turned aside and replaced with standard infill, and by that the slicer did not have to follow complex paths of lying tubes, but just go for its standard zigzag, which saved a lot of time in this component. I think for this component, this was one of the main optimizations. For others, we of course did some other optimizations. For example, we had, according to the standard, the minimal outer wall of a fired brick has to be 20 millimeters. So we aim to have 22 millimeters in wet state because we have 10% shrinkage, which in the end meant we made a special nozzle having a diameter of 7.66 millimeters, three parameter layers on the outer walls that then resulted in 22 millimeters, which then shrinked to 20 millimeters. So this was the kind of design for additive manufacturing we did too. So it was mostly optimization for the process.
Okay, thank you. And one last quick question, like all of the bricks in the final array, like did you mix regular bricks with 3D printed bricks?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, this is mixed. You can see it, I think you see it best on that brick for the bats, where you have that that smaller one down here in direct comparison. We still have a slightly different appearance, but this is me taking a close-up picture and imagining you include something like this into your facade, you put it in the gable. Your viewing distance is about, I don't know, 4 meters, 5 meters. So we were quite confident that it worked.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Victor Portes. I represent a company called More Than Layers in the Netherlands, Haarlem and Amsterdam. And a sister company is called Neolithic, and they specialize in 3D printing concrete. So that's kind of my general introduction here. The fundamental question that I have, and that my colleagues are also facing in the Netherlands, it's how to approach policymakers in the areas of, let's say, you know, not only the construction companies, but if you go to the gemeente, municipality, they're going to have new housing, new buildings. Do you see any, this is fucking fantastic, dude. It's like really awesome. And why I like it, and I think this everybody should know about this around the world, is because there's a lot of people who really want this and want to be part of the story. And again, for me, it's, do you see any, I won't say friction, but how do you see this getting to the right people in not only the government layers, but also people who are developing real estate, living areas, entertainment, hotels? I hope my question makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think with a certain commercialization, like we have it with that industry partner who already provides these products, it's quite easy to just use their distribution lines. So they have already the demand. For somebody who's developing real estate, from my experience, if they have to do it, because otherwise they can't build, they will pay for that brick. But they will not have an intrinsic motivation to pay more for a brick because they have to sell it back to somebody else. It's more commercially driven, so nobody will do that without being forced, I think. Some people maybe for their personal homes, but not developers. Sorry, my faith in developers is a bit lost. Yes, I think for this one, it's quite easy to just use the distribution lines of the manufacturer.
We have another question.
Hi, thank you, Alex, for this interesting presentation, and wish you, of course, the best in your research. I have a question regarding the shrinkage.
Yeah.
How you dealt with this shrinkage factor, especially when I saw the image where you scan brick and you have like a space that you want to fill. So do you usually just scale the object by 20%, or did you use, because you can't easily predict the shrinkage behavior of like 3D printed clay?
So yes, we easily predict the shrinkage behavior actually. So it's 10%. It's really, we did a lot of testing, and every time I get a new ceramic material, I run a test series of having with different pieces in different shapes and different parameters, and the outcome is usually it's 10%. So sometimes it's 9.5% and sometimes it's 10.3%. But on average, we go for 10% because bricks in general are so inaccurate that you have big tolerances in masonry anyway. So you have like 2-3 centimeters on a running meter of a wall. So I actually don't care too much for 2 millimeters distortion in shrinking, to be honest. So my rule of thumb is 10%, but for every new material, you've seen worked with white materials, green, yellow, red materials. We test it, but every time we test it, I just bet €10 that it's 10%.